Episode number 91 of People I Know Show. Curt Carstensen joined today by Noah Franske. Noah, I think I kind of maybe know where you're at today, but I'm not exactly sure. Where in the world are you?
Yeah, I'm in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam.
Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. And you've been there since when?
I arrived here in July of 2019.
So about a year and a half or so as we speak today.
Yep.
And the world was a bit different back then. And I do want to talk about all of that. And I know you've been to many places in the last few years. So I'm excited to get in a conversation with someone that's doing some international things, an American that's doing some international things right now. But the reason that we connected more recently is I put a post on Facebook as I've been getting more and more interested in stocks and cryptocurrencies. And I'm wondering, I was thinking a lot of people must be doing this. The Wall Street bets thing seemed to indicate that a lot of people are doing this for the first time. So I put a status out on a post out on Facebook to see who else might be interested in this right now. And you're one of a few people that got back to me. So I just want to have an amateur-esque conversation about what people are doing, because I'm dabbling in this for the first time. The cryptos, It sounds like you are. Explain your interest level in doing some, well, whether it's investing or I think it's more like gambling in some of this, but let's chat a little bit about that. What's your exposure right now to some of these cryptos and stocks?
Absolutely. Yes. I think amateur-esque is definitely going to be the key word about our conversation. I should start by saying I am by no means an expert and should not be a financial advisor in any way. But what I did realize very early in my life was that I didn't need a lot of money to live. And so I had a lot of disposable income. And that mixed with my father being a financial guy led to investing from a pretty early age. And Dad has always been pretty a conservative investor, and then a few kind of speculative stocks on the side just to scratch the itch of wanting to feel that kind of gambling side of the stock market, because who doesn't get excited when you put a little bit of money in a stock and it flies through the roof. So really for me, the ball was already kind of rolling when I was younger. And so that made it easier for me when I was kind of trying to take control of my own finances to be able to dabble a little bit here and there. I most of my investments are pretty safe. I invest a lot in index funds. I invest a lot in large and small cap mutual funds. And so more recently, you were kind of asking people that during the pandemic were looking for some way to kind of gamble or have some more fun with some of these stocks. And I have a friend here in Vietnam who is really into crypto. Like, he has read everything there is to read. He's in the news all the time. He said, have you heard about this thing? Just today, he said, oh man, this one project of mine went 10 times. And it's exciting when you hear people talking about it and when you see what's happening with crypto. And so just like a lot of people with stocks, I needed some way to get started. And so several months ago, he helped me set up an account here in Vietnam, which is a different ball game than getting something set up in America or in Canada or in Australia, where we have friends here that are from all over the place.
Okay.
And just started, putting a little bit of money in every day into crypto. And watching crypto is so much more exciting than watching mutual funds. It is a roller coaster ride. Like in stocks, even in individual stocks, like a change of 5 to 10% in a day could be a huge deal. Crypto will change 40, 50% in a day. And it's crazy because you really have to be in. You have to decide what kind of an investor you're going to be. It's the same with stocks. If you're going to be doing things like GameStop, which was the big Wall Street bets thing that you were talking about, you have to be watching your stocks all the time. You have to be prepared for massive swings. And you have to know what your sell point is and what your buy points are. And, it's similar with crypto. You can decide that you're going to be like a day trader and you're just watching for the peaks and valleys and you're trading quickly. With me, I kind of decided I'm going to choose a few that I think are safer bets. So like Ethereum and Bitcoin are kind of the two big players right now. And those are kind of like the general stock market. You expect them to go up.
Yep.
So you start leveling in a little bit, and then you just kind of let your money ride and just see what happens. I have not sold anything, and I don't intend to sell anything for a long time. But I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, that, I think that gives a good background. And there's people hearing and watching our conversation right now that probably have given little to no thought about cryptocurrency.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I mean, as more amateur-esque background on what it is, and I don't think I'm a great person to explain this, but I have been spending a lot of time trying to understand why the prices of Bitcoin are going so high. Within the last few days of the recording here, they've gone over $50,000 a piece for the first time. And I think, I'd imagine for people buying into some of the low level, more obscure cryptocurrencies, they're hoping that someday each one of those becomes that. And from what I've listened to and what I've read, that's super unlikely. But I guess it's always possible. But more so when you're buying things that are trading at pennies a piece, it doesn't take a huge rise. Well, I guess it would be a huge rise, but it doesn't take a huge dollar amount for it to act similarly to what Bitcoin has done over the course of any given maybe year over the last few years, where it's gone up 15, 20
Mm-hmm.
times or whatever the numbers have been. So I think when we look at it and we use the word gambling, I think it truly is a gamble, because most of these cryptocurrencies, maybe like a lot of the .coms that boomed back in 2000, most of them can't be sustainable. I don't see how all of these can be sustainable. But right now, there's a lot of people jumping in for the first time or putting all of their extra money into it. So they all keep going up and up and up. So I think it is a huge gamble. But as long as you're paying attention to it, know that at some point you better sell most of these things, that you can probably make some money off it and have that fun ride of seeing just these crazy ups and downs. I'll go into one of my apps and I'll see like the highest gainer of the day was like 80 or 90%. As I looked at it today, I'm like, I've never heard of this thing. What is this? Why didn't I buy it yesterday? All these thoughts run through my mind quickly. Then it's more like, all right, whatever. This is going to happen all the time. I'll throw a little bit of money into a few of these and just see, maybe I get lucky and it goes up 100 times over the next 10 years or something somehow, and I make a bunch of money, and then I have to make sure I have a sell point, which I haven't established yet, but I feel like I'm not going to sell anytime soon. It's kind of all or nothing for now until I understand what's going on a bit more. But the thing about it that doesn't make any sense to me is they claim to want to be like a replacement currency, but I don't see with their values being so volatile, who would want to hold the currency. That's why people in the countries, like, let's say, I know people mention Venezuela a lot because their currency has gone out of control in the wrong direction. Like, you don't want to hold that currency in that country. You need to get rid of it and turn it into something that's value isn't going to change, because no one wants a currency whose value is not stable, and these cryptocurrencies are not stable. So when are we actually going to be trading Bitcoin as currency instead of a US dollar? It doesn't make any sense, because you wouldn't want to do that. You won't want to get rid of your Bitcoin because it keeps going higher, for instance.
You are asking some fantastic questions, and I can speak to some of them. But what I will start by saying is, what will I start by saying? I'll start by saying, when you talk about like the .com bust, you have to think about stocks and crypto as different things.
Mm-hmm.
Stocks, you are investing in a company, right? And crypto is more, the best I've heard it, think about it as if you're buying gold,
mm-hmm.
right? So lots of people make this comparison between cryptocurrency and gold, because gold is something that people have placed value on. If you think about it, people use gold to make jewelry, and there are some other applications like for the chemical properties of gold. But in reality, it's just something that people have decided is worth something. And that's what you really need to be able to hold value. You need the whole world to decide that this thing is valuable. The reason that paper is not traded like gold is because there's a lot of it, right? There's a lot of paper. You can cut down more trees. You can make more paper. There's like an infinite amount of paper. But gold, to get gold, you have to mine it. It is very expensive and costly to do so. And there's a finite amount of gold in the world. It will never go through the roof. What happened with Venezuela is if you just print more and more and more money, the value of all the money goes down.
Yeah.
And it's the reason crypto is going to work, or that people think it's going to work, is because there's a ceiling. And it gets really technical really fast. The code is built so that there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin in existence. There cannot be more than 21 million. Right now in the world, I don't know the current number because it changes all the time, the way that Bitcoin mining works. But the reason it's so volatile right now is because the amount of Bitcoin changes so fast. So to answer your question about when we will be using Bitcoin to trade, I don't think that it's going to be a really useful thing until they're very close to that cap.
Oh, okay.
Because once they get close to that 21 million Bitcoin, then Bitcoin becomes more useful as a trading item as opposed to a speculative investing item. And in reality, that's really where we are with gold, right? They're still mining gold, but the rate of production of gold is nowhere near what it was 100, 150, 200 years ago. So gold has become more steady. It's still raising in value because the dollar still keeps raising in value. Inflation happens. But the fact that there's this ceiling on Bitcoin and really any other coin that's worth talking about means that at some point it should stabilize and then have a rate of inflation of its own, which could be tied to or very different than the currency in a country. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And maybe I shouldn't use the word amateur around you because you're the first person to ever explain that part of it that way. So that was always one of my big concerns. Like, when will this stop? How will we know this would stop? But that does make sense. And I suppose there was a time in history not that long ago where I suppose like the mid 1800s in the gold rush in California. I don't know what was happening right before then, but suddenly there was more gold, or people thought there was more gold, and we didn't know how much more gold there was. But now I think we have a pretty good sense of the earth, not me, but other people that are smarter than me, to know that there's maybe some more gold out there, but there's not so much. We kind of know how much exists totally.
Yeah.
And the price can then, I suppose, although it's not ever completely stable, you kind of know what something's worth when you know exactly how much there is and how much there's going to be. So I suppose maybe the last part of trying to give myself and clarify something, but also others a better understanding, until we get to that 21 million, every time, is it true, every time there's any sort of transaction involving Bitcoin, some supercomputer somewhere solves some giant algorithmic problem, math problem, and by them completing the problem first, they get some amount of Bitcoin. I forget if it's a whole one now or half of one or a quarter one, wherever we are with that. They get some amount of Bitcoin. So that is why it's changing, because people are trading. Every time someone trades a Bitcoin, sells it to somebody else, there needs to be another part of a Bitcoin created to prove that happened.
You are also you know more than you give yourself credit for.
But when I express it, it sounds like I'm asking a question and I'm unsure. You sound much more confident.
You are correct. Yeah, what you're describing is the mining process. And mining, it's called mining in part because of the way that it's tied to precious metals, right? So instead of having to go out and dig for more gold, every time there's a block, it's called a block. And a block, I don't know the number. It might be like 10 transactions. So when I make a transaction for Bitcoin, it's added to this thing that's called a block. And once there are 10 of them, then someone out there who's a miner has an incredible amount of computing power, and they do what's called a hashing algorithm, and they solve a math problem, which is exactly what you described. And when Bitcoin started, for someone to add a block to the blockchain, they had to do so much work computationally, and they received 50 Bitcoin.
Wow.
Which now is crazy to think about, because 50 Bitcoin would be worth $2.5 million, which is insane. But back then it wasn't. I mean, Bitcoins were worth pennies when it started, right? And after there's a certain number of Bitcoins, and this is all written into the code, there's what's called a halving. So it cuts in half. So after there was a certain amount of Bitcoin, it became only 25 every time that someone added a block to the blockchain. And then it was 12 and a half. And now we are at 6.25. So right now,
still very valuable.
Yes, it's still incredibly valuable.
Okay.
So these miners, And what happens, this is exactly as it was designed to happen. There are more miners. It is harder to add a block to the blockchain. There is more computational power required to solve these mathematical algorithms. And so you're mining with less of a frequency. So 6.25 Bitcoin is still incredible. I mean, that's over $300,000, but it's happening less often. And at some point, it will divide in half again and again and again. And mathematically, as a math teacher, this is fascinating to me because it's a geometric series for those of you that know that language. But eventually, the mining will be such a little piece of it because you're not getting hardly anything for doing it, right? If you keep dividing it in half, eventually it'll be very small. And that is when we will be at that place where we have almost 121 million, or sorry, 21 million that exist, and so mining won't be as necessary, right?
Okay, that makes sense. And I think I said there's one last piece, but the other piece that comes to mind now is because when this started, it was the first of its kind, and the way to access what you own, whatever Bitcoin you own, is different than something tangible. Like you don't actually have it, and you can't put it in your safe. Your safe.
Here's my one Bitcoin, right? I'm holding
it. That there's many Bitcoin that are lost forever because people back when they gave it any thought, it was not worth a lot. So they gave it probably as much thought as someone would give something that isn't worth very much. And now that it's worth a lot, they're trying to remember, did I have some and how do I get it? And they can't, they won't. And that allows all the ones that are actually, well, not tangible, but tradable, the ones that exist to be more valuable because yes, there's supposed to be 21 million, but there never will be 21 million tradable. There's going to be something, I don't know, was it 15 million, something like that, something fewer.
Yeah, and this problem exists even with all tangible things, right? Yesterday I was talking with a colleague of mine, and she said that her in-laws are a family that owns gold. They own gold because they don't trust inflation, they don't trust currency, and the father of this family was the one that was in charge of it. And he hid the gold all around the house. And then he contracted Alzheimer's.
Oh.
And so he forgot where everything was. And so, you know, part of me is like, best treasure hunt ever, right? Like, send the kids out on the house and see if they can find all your gold. But you don't know how much you have. And, you know, it's the same with money, right? If your house catches fire and you've got a bunch of cash in it, it's gone. And there was a story recently about a guy that lost like $120 million because he couldn't remember the code for his hard drive, and he had all this Bitcoin on it. And you are exactly correct. And that's one of the things that that my friend has run a couple seminars for the students at our school. I'm a math teacher at a school here, and he's a physics teacher, and he's run some talks about, you know, getting into Bitcoin, and he's a huge nerd like me. So he talks a little bit about the code, but also, you know, about if you want to get into this, you need a safe way to store it. And there are hot wallets and cold wallets, and hot wallets are basically online. But it's like holding gold. And if you forget your password, or there's usually 12 words that you need to be able to recover a wallet. Okay. If you forget what those words are, or you wrote them down on a piece of paper and you lost it, I mean, it is a very real thing to just lose your money. And that's one of the things, just like stocks. I mean, you have to get into it with some knowledge of risk, and also some questions about how you're going to make it secure and how you are going to evaluate that risk. Usually what I see with people that get into crypto is they start with $100, $200, you know, something that they are really willing to lose. And even then, I mean, if you put $200 in, from an investment standpoint, I should say $200 is a valuable amount of money. You can do a lot of important things with $200. But from an investment standpoint, if you're saving a percentage of your salary, $200 is probably not very much. And so people will throw that in and say, I'll see what happens. And if that disappears, it's probably okay. But once you reach a certain threshold, like if you're at $5,000 or $10,000, that's when you want to start making sure, okay, do I understand exactly how this is being stored? Do I know what's going to happen if there is a problem with the way I'm storing this? Because you don't want to get Alzheimer's and forget where all your gold is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's not a good thing. I keep thinking I want to say this because, and this is a good place to put it in. You talked about, you know, there's some coins that do 5 times in a day or 10 times in a day. And you say, oh, I wish I could have bought that yesterday. And just like the stock market, no one has a crystal ball. No one can say this coin is going to fly through the roof tomorrow. And even if you knew that, if someone told you this coin named sushi, there is a coin named sushi. If someone said this coin, do you own some sushi?
Oh, but it sounds very, very good. I'd like to have some.
There are some fun ones. There's sushi, there's flamingo, there's polka dot. I mean, they have these incredible names, and some of them are total garbage. I mean, and there's no way to really know unless you read through the source code and you decide for yourself that this is a worthwhile project, which the percentage of people in the world that can do that are pretty small. But even if someone told you sushi is going to fly through the roof this week, would you really feel comfortable putting like $10,000 into that? Probably not. So when you hear about something going 10 times, maybe you're willing to throw $100 into this really, really risky thing. 10 times 100 is 1,000. $1,000 is great, but it's not life-changing, right? So even when you hear things about multiplying by many times, unless you are super risky and you really want to be a gambler, even when you hear about these things happening, to make it life-changing, you really have to put like your entire portfolio on the line, which I am not willing to do, right? Most of my money is in what I consider safe crypto, Bitcoin, Ethereum. I mean, and then maybe you throw $5 at sushi, and then even if it explodes, you don't have that much more money. I mean, the excitement for me is just in the process. As a real coding nerd and a mathematics nerd, I think the background of it is fascinating, and I'm just excited to be a part of it. But in terms of my entire portfolio, I don't think I will ever go over 5% in crypto because I just don't trust it that much. Yeah, and when you talk about why things go up and why they go down, my buddy, my physics teacher buddy, the way he always likes to describe it is the only thing that's driving it right now is if people are buying or if people are selling. It's the same with stocks. You know, Elon Musk will tweet, he'll say, Dogecoin is incredible, everyone should go buy it. And then everyone starts buying and the price starts going up. And then people start to realize maybe this isn't such a good idea. Or they say, hey, I've made a lot of money, I'm going to start selling. When people start selling, the price goes down. And that's really what drives the price of any good, right? Supply and demand. The more people are buying, the higher the price goes. And if people start selling, the price drops. And honestly, watching them, it's like a roller coaster. It's crazy because you have people right now who are like excited about it and just want to get in the game, but they don't know a lot about it. And so they see things shoot up and shoot down and they get nervous and they start selling, and it's very volatile, but still fun and exciting to watch for sure.
The shooting up and the shooting down, I think the shooting up is what gets new people interested and involved. And the shooting down is when you get burned by that the first time, probably has people never doing it again. And you got to realize, I'm learning more and more, there's someone or many somewhere else that are very aware of what's going on. And they're the ones that know about when to sell all they own when it shoots up. And that's why it shoots down so quickly, because they're putting huge amounts of whatever they own for sale at the time that others are kind of inching in for the first time. And the price drops significantly. Then everybody else who's holding it has the thought of, do I want to hope that this goes back up, or do I just either take whatever I'm ahead and collect on it right now, or cut my losses right now? And everyone's selling. And that's, I guess, the way markets move. A lot of psychological things are almost entirely psychological, depending on what it is that you're buying or owning. Some of the stuff doesn't have much value besides what you think the next person's going to pay you for it. And once they don't think the next person's going to pay you more than you paid or than it's currently priced, then everyone just decides to sell at once. And that's why things crash. It's best I understand it.
And you also, really, our entire conversation so far has been about using crypto as a way to make money, which it never really was designed to do. I mean, I think the creator of cryptocurrency is a fictitious person named Satoshi Nakamoto. No one knows who it is. It could have been a group of people. No one's really sure. But they wrote this paper about how it was going to work. And the whole purpose was to get money out of banks. Banks, a lot of people say, banks are super corrupt. They are huge criminals. And there are a lot of huge scandals with banks. There are people that don't trust their money in banks. That's why people buy gold, or people, invest into different markets that gets their money out of a bank account. And so when you look at the average everyday trader like you and me, we are looking at like, oh my gosh, it's like a stock. I hope this makes money and then I can sell it and then I have a bunch of cash. But where does that cash have to go? It has to go back into a bank. And so like when you hear about Elon Musk putting $1.5 billion into Bitcoin, that happened about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago now, something like that. It was on the 9th of February. He tweeted, and Bitcoin did 30% that day, because it was just incredible that he would put that much faith into cryptocurrency. And he is not counting on maybe someday. I don't think he's going to pull all that money out at some point and be like, oh, look at all this money I've made. The people that are investing like that are counting on Bitcoin or crypto being the future, and seeing someday, like you've talked about, where we're trading in Bitcoin, where you can, touch a fob to a touchpad and it accesses your public wallet and it takes the amount of Bitcoin out that's required to do whatever you're doing, and it shifts it to somebody else. And that really was the dream. The dream was that crypto is untraceable by governments, by banks. Everyone can see every trade that has ever been made. You could go on right now and see the blockchain for the last 24 hours. You could see every trade that's been made, but it's all numbers for identification. You would never know it was me or if it was Elon Musk or whatever. And that is attractive to a lot of people, because if people don't trust banks or think that at some point the dollar is going to crash like it did in Venezuela, Bitcoin could be a more stable option. And that was really the dream. So when you have people that are thinking, oh, I'm going to make all this money on Bitcoin and then sell, there are a lot of people that have done that already. But for me, it's more interesting to just leave it there and see what happens. In 2018, there was a huge spike and then just as huge of a drop. Mm-hmm. A lot of people got into Bitcoin when it was rising, and then it dropped off and they lost a lot of money. So my best advice to anyone that just wants to get into crypto and actually wants to use it to make money would be, choose an amount of money you are willing to lose. Put it in, I do it slowly. I do a little bit of money every day, because then the peaks and valleys, it averages out. And then once I'm at my target for the amount I want to invest, I'm just not going to touch it, probably for a very long time. Because if at some point there's a crash, if I leave it all there, I still have, think about it as having 5 bricks of gold. If you have 5 bricks of gold, the amount of gold you have won't change. The value could change, but you hold it. So if I have 5 units of Bitcoin, whatever that is, I just hold on to it, and I hope at someday, even if it crashes, I hope that it comes back up. And if it crashes, to be honest, I would probably buy more, because I say it's on sale then, right? Yep. And then I hold all of that, and then at someday, because I have faith in it, it comes back up, then I'm doing great. But that's my advice. Pick amount of money that you can lose, put it in, and just watch the roller coaster go and see what happens.
Yeah, so when you said the people that bought Bitcoin around 2018 at the spike and then they lost money, they lost money if they sold it. They didn't lose money. If they've held it, they've now made money in theory. But then again, you've never really lost or made as long as you're holding it, because you still own the same amount.
Right.
Someday when you liquidate it in some other way, then I guess that is when you can finally decide if you've lost or gained. And one thought I had when you're talking about the friend's family with the gold hidden around the house and now no one knows exactly where it is, I had the realization, probably like the Bitcoin that seems to be lost forever, I'm sure, again, people that have studied this more have a better sense, but there were ships going across the ocean that shipwrecked, and there's huge amounts of gold or other things that were very valuable at that time that are probably lost forever at the bottom of the ocean. And there's a lot of it. And I suppose that being lost forever does push up the value of everything that is still accessible. And
Right.
those types of things can happen, I suppose, with anything. So the fact that someone might lose some Bitcoin someday, not so different than anything else, as you mentioned, cash burning in a fire, etc.
Right.
Everything that we have couldn't disappear if we're not careful about it. And if we're careful about it, it might disappear anyhow.
Yeah. No, that's an excellent point. That's an excellent point. Yeah.
Okay, I think we've covered this pretty well. We spent about a half hour talking about it, and I think that's for people that have never thought about it at all. This is a good introductory conversation, and if anyone has more questions, can always like leave them in the comments or message one of us. And I'd love to get back on this topic in the future. But
Sure.
Noah, you've done something that I thought about doing. I thought about it for the first time, I think, 4 years ago. At that time, I thought maybe I should just give up my life here and go teach English in some country far away because they're always looking for that. I don't think that's exactly what you did, but you can explain. Maybe that is. But you had a few jobs. One of them where we worked together, and I usually don't get into that on the podcast. But the other one, you were a math teacher and at a local Twin Cities high school, as far as I understand it. And you've been doing that for a few years, and suddenly you decided everything I have in Minnesota will go away for a while, and you're gonna leave. Tell me how that all transpired.
Yeah. We have to go back a little further to get here. So I grew up in Minnesota, went to high school in Minnesota, and then I went to college at Notre Dame in Indiana. I majored in mathematics and computer science. And I had a lot of people tell me during college that I'd be a good teacher. And what I knew about teachers was they work too hard and they don't get paid enough, which I have found to be so much more true than I ever thought it was. But it also has been an absolute joy. I decided to give it a shot. I did a program called the Alliance for Catholic Education, which is a Notre Dame run program. And they sent me to St. Petersburg, Florida to teach for 2 years. So I cut my teeth on teaching in Florida at a Catholic high school in St. Pete, and fell in love with it. I almost quit the first day. I had a panic attack. I was thinking, how can I do this every day? I am responsible for young lives, and I didn't know what I had gotten into, but came back on day 2 and haven't looked back since. And so I got this taste for teaching. Really love teaching mathematics, but I have always wanted to travel. And there was an option for an extension program from ACE called CHASE, the Chile Alliance for Catholic Education. So you go to Chile for a year and a half and you teach English. We took intensive language classes. We lived with host families, and we were teaching English in Chilean schools. So most of my colleagues did not speak English. I didn't enjoy teaching English. I knew that was something I didn't really want to do long term. Because when you grow up speaking English, you never learn about things like the third conditional or verb tenses. Or it was weird. It was like I had to learn the whole language again, and I really missed mathematics, which is something not a lot of people feel, I don't think. So I was thinking I probably need to get back into mathematics. So after Chile, I came home because both of my sisters were getting married. And I knew my older sister really wanted to have kids. I'm the third of 4. And it was a good time to be home. So I came home, I got a job at my high school. So I worked at my former high school for 5 years, and picked up a job along the way at a casino, dealing blackjack, just because that was something that I had always wanted to do. And I figured, why not? And working at the casino, it taught me a lot of interesting things. It was like this merger of everything I loved about mathematics and how much I loved working with people, the whole psychology side of it. And it made me think about a lot of things. And one of the things I thought about a lot was what's called the law of large numbers. And don't worry, this is not going to get super mathematical, but the law of large numbers is why casinos make money. The casino knows if they win 55% of the time, if they win 55% of the time, then if I come and I sit down at the table, I have a 45% chance of winning. So in one hand, there's a decent chance that I'll win. But if you get 100,000 people that all sit in the casino on the same day, the casino knows that on average, they will end up with money. But to make that happen, you need a lot of people to play, right? That's the whole idea behind a casino. You want to get a lot of people in the door. and keep them playing as long as possible, because that is when the math works. With one person, the math probably will not be great because it's very volatile. It's like the stock market, right? It goes up and down all the time. But when you get a large number of people, everything averages out and the math works. So the way I applied this to my life, I was thinking, man, I feel the same way about the way you live your life, right? The things you spend the most time doing, the highest percentage of time that you spend doing certain things, that's really what defines who you are. If you spend most of your time playing video games, if you spend most of your time watching TV, if you spend most of your time outside in nature, if you spend most of your time hanging out with family and friends, those are the things that kind of define who you are. If someone says, how do you relate to this person, or how describe this person to me, they're probably going to describe the thing that they see you doing the most often, or at least that they see doing with them. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, I want to be spending my time doing the things I love to do. And one of the things I really love is travel. And so I thought, how can I incorporate travel into my life in a more meaningful and real way? And if I can, how can I get somebody to pay me to do it? And so I started looking. The high school I was teaching at in Minnesota, they had a deal where if you teach for 5 years, you can take a leave of absence for up to 2 years. Up to 5 years. And so I decided I was going to take a leave of absence and started looking for international school jobs all over Asia, because I had kind of done South America when I was in Chile. I had done a trip or two to Europe after saving my pennies. And I was lucky with my high school. We had a program that sent me to Africa for a summer. So I was thinking Asia was kind of an area of the world that I hadn't seen. And so I started looking and applying for jobs here in Asia, and had some interviews in Korea, had some interviews with some schools in Europe as well that were just kind of some add-ons that I put in there. And then I had this interview with this school in Vietnam, and man, do things move fast. They want to sign people quickly. So 2 days after I had my interview, they offered me a job. I talked with a couple other teachers here at the school, and I picked up this awesome job teaching IB mathematics here in Ho Chi Minh City. And it's been so much better than I could have imagined. There are a lot of, I've heard more and more stories of people who take a leap and they go somewhere and it turns out to not be what they expected. But for me, I've been very fortunate. It's been everything I wanted and more. The school I teach at is fantastic. The students are phenomenal. They all are very driven and very motivated. My colleagues are great. I have a really good support group of friends. I started with a big group of people that are all around my age. And so we kind of have this little expat community. I love the Vietnamese culture. I ride a motorbike everywhere in like a herd. Like, it's incredible the number of motorbikes that are out on the streets. And the one thing that I was really hoping for, one of the reasons I wanted to move so far, was so it would be easy to travel to other countries. Mm-hmm. And for the first 6 months, that was super true. I got to go visit a cousin that was living in Malaysia. I went to the Philippines. I went to Cambodia. And then February hit and everything closed. And I have seen a lot of Vietnam in the last year, and I have only grown to love it more. It is so beautiful. My girlfriend and I did the whole country on motorbikes last summer. We spent 7 weeks. We did 5,500 kilometers. Wow. Just seeing everything and everyone. And the people here are just wonderful. Once you get out of the city, very little English anywhere, but everyone is helpful and wanting to be of service. And it was a life-changing and eye-opening trip, and it was awesome. So it was a very long answer to a very short question, but hopefully that gives you a little idea about what got me here and what motivates me and what I'm doing here in Vietnam.
I have about 7 follow-up questions. I'll see how many of those I can remember before we get through them all. One is, so still, it's been about a year since the pandemic started, give or take. Have you not been able to leave the country in that year still?
That's correct. So I kind of defined it as being in a really giant prison cell. We can go anywhere we want in Vietnam. Domestic flights, even for the majority of the time, have been operating because Vietnam, for those that haven't read it in the news, Vietnam has handled this phenomenally. We've had a recent resurgence, kind of another wave of the virus. But still, our total cases are around 3,000 since inception, and our total deaths are at 36.
Wow.
I know. And when I hear the numbers coming out of the States, I am amazed at how well they've handled it here. And that is largely in part um, because of what happened with SARS in the early 2000s. Vietnam was kind of caught unprepared. And so this time around, immediately, I mean, when no one else anywhere was doing anything, we were closed. Schools online from February 2nd. Like we came back from a Lunar New Year holiday and everything was shut. Um, and I look back and everyone was kind of like, why are we doing this? And now it's like, wow, okay, they were really under control. They knew what was going on. So by May, really all of Vietnam was available to anyone already in Vietnam. But if you leave, it's very difficult to get back. So it's not like we're not allowed to leave, but if I left, my school would be very upset with me because there's pretty much no chance I could get back into the country without having to quarantine for 3 weeks, and even at that, I might not be able to get back at all. So, yeah, 1 year.
You are teaching math, but you're
Mhm.
teaching it in English, I'm
Yeah.
assuming. How is that taking place? Who are these students? How do they know so much English? Explain the education system there that you are able to come over and teach math and English, and people are able to learn it so well. I'm assuming
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. So there's a network of schools in the world that are called international schools, and they even have them in Minnesota. There's one in Minnetonka. So international schools are aimed at giving a more global educational opportunity. So our school, a lot of international schools are started because there's a large expat community. So our school was started because there was an influx of business people, diplomats coming to Vietnam, and they were looking for an educational opportunity that was not a Vietnamese public school, because a Vietnamese public school will be taught in Vietnamese. It'll be run by the government, and that is undesirable for a lot of people because a lot of countries have really rough education systems. So these international schools are started as for-profit businesses, which I struggle with sometimes because the people at the top of the chain are really interested in making money. And then you run that all the way down to the teachers who are really interested in teaching kids. And then you have the admin that's kind of in between these two people that want to make money and want to help kids. And so our school, the entire curriculum is taught in English. So students, if they are with us, we are a K through 12 program. And so if they are with us the whole way through, they'll have 13 years of education in English. So I teach years, the way we do it here, year 13 is senior, even though it's really like a 12th grade. So I teach years 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And by the time they get to me, if they've been with our school the whole way through, they are fluent in English. Perfect. But there's a lot of students coming and going. The parents here, it's interesting. They are not as, I don't know what the right word to use is. They're not complainers. They don't email teachers saying, why is my student's grade this? But they do believe that different schools offer different programs to kids. There's one school here in town that is known for being the best in sports. There's another school that's known for being the best in academics. I think our school does a really nice job all around. We have good fine arts. We have good academics. We have, I think, excellent English instruction. But we're kind of an all-around school. I would say we're not the best in anything, but we are definitely not the worst in anything either. And so parents will pull kids out of one school and put them in another. And so sometimes I'll get a kid who had 3 years in Vietnamese schools, 2 years in this international school, 1 year in this international school, and now they're here. And so that's one of the challenges, is trying to figure out, okay, how much English do they know? What mathematics have they learned? Where are the holes? And how do I fill them in? So there's a lot of differentiated instruction. And a lot of encouraging kids to work in groups with their peers to try to fill in those gaps. But yeah, international schools, they exist in, I think, almost every country. Here, the only addendum to that is that all students that are of Vietnamese descent have to take a Vietnamese culture class, which is basically the government's way of making sure that they are learning Vietnamese principles, because we are in a communist country. and the government wants to make sure that their citizens are learning what they believe are the proper Vietnamese cultures and strategies, I would say. Yeah.
Of the students in your school, if you can estimate a percentage, how many are Vietnamese and how many are children of people from other maybe English speaking countries that have settled into
Sure.
Vietnam and are called expats? And I want to get to the term
Mm-hmm.
expat after you give this answer.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great question. And I should mention anyone is welcome to come to our school. We charge tuition, but anyone that can pay it can come. So there are lots of Vietnamese families who, once these international schools started popping up all over the place, said, hey, this is a much better educational system than they're getting in the public schools. So we are about 50% Vietnamese, and then about 25% Korean. There's a lot of Korean business people here, and they send their kids to our schools. About 10% Japanese, and then the rest is just kind of a mixture. So I would say I think I have one American student in all of my classes. I have a few Australian students. I have one or two British students. The rest of them are all, I would say, of Asian descent. So Japanese, Korean, Vietnamese for the most part. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I would have thought for some reason there had been more Americans there, but I guess maybe there's just not a great reason for an American to be living in Vietnam. Like I feel like I'm guessing some other parts of the world at an international school, there might be more American families living nearby sending their kids to the school, but maybe not there specifically, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
The term expat, I heard a comparison recently. Like I've heard that term for a few years, and then in this country, we don't use that. We use that. I think we use the term alien to describe someone from another country, whether they're legal or illegal. That term has been around for, I don't know, way too long, and it has a very negative connotation because it's almost saying you don't belong here, you're an alien. Meanwhile, when the term expat sounds
so sexy, right? It's like, oh, you're an expat. Yeah. That's a great point, and it's something I have not considered a lot. Yeah, and I would when you said alien, I thought the term you were going to use was foreigner, which also makes it feel like someone is unwelcome.
Yes,
okay. I mean, either way, really, yeah, it's yeah, and I think I would have to give this more thought because when I think about it, I think, okay, patriot. Patriot, I think, has this very American connotation. But all of my Australian friends call themselves expats. Or Westerners. Often you'll hear people here say, you know, oh, that's a Western bar, or that's a Western restaurant, or that's where they serve Western food. And so I hear Westerner a lot, and I also hear expat a lot. Yeah, expat stands for expatriate, which is understood to be someone that has left their home country and is working somewhere else. But yeah, we don't use it in the States, and we should. Here it is. We're starting it today, calling it everyone in the States that has moved from a different country an expat. All the Canadians that live there, right? Expats.
They left the Queen for whatever we want to call it in the United States. And elsewhere in the world, everyone, I believe, pretty much everyone calls USA the States. Certainly States. In Canada, they call us the States, I think, from the Canadians I know. But most places, they don't say USA, United States of America. They, I think, tend to call the States.
Yeah, I usually when someone asks me where I'm from, I say I'm from the States, and a lot of the Vietnamese won't understand that, so I'll say USA, and then they'll know. But especially Canadians take issue with America, right? Because North America, South America, even when I was in Chile, right? If anyone said that I was from America, they would say, well, we're all from America. And usually it was just because they were having fun with it. Because they think that it's a pretty arrogant statement for anyone from the USA to say that it's America and nowhere else is. But I definitely here, I don't say I'm from America to hardly anyone. I think it's just it's habit now that I don't use America anymore because I don't know if people would really understand what I'm saying anyway.
They probably wouldn't, and we don't think about that from being from the United States of America. That is the proper name of our country, I guess, as far as I know. But
what a boring name, right? I mean, like, it's describing what we are. I bet. I don't know.
But we focus at least is in our lexicon on focusing on being Americans, but
Mm-hmm.
truly that's not descriptive. That is incorrect. That is saying that we are from one of the North, Central, or South American countries. Really,
Yeah.
by the word itself, obviously we take a different meaning, but it's true that we are from the states of
Mm-hmm.
America. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
calling us from the states makes much more sense when you actually look at it from afar.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm trying to think now if I say I'm from the States, if that could be confused for another country, if I'm still being arrogant. Because you have like the United Arab Emirates, right? So that's not states; they're Emirates. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there are states in Mexico. There are other countries that have states, but I don't think anyone would say they were from the states if they were from Mexico. That'd be very confusing.
It is confusing. I think because you can call a country a state. I think in some ways it is
Yeah,
described
like a
as a state,
nation state.
nation state. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's
yeah,
things that we don't. I guess I don't really think about our country. The alien, the foreigner, the expat, the states, Americans, all these things that are just
right.
commonplace in our language. That around the world, people of the many things that are probably questionable about how we run our business around here and do what we do, I think those are just a few things that others from around the world will look at us and shake their heads at, or really wonder why do we do it the way we do it.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. I think we have bigger fish to fry. That's probably true. Oh,
You got into using math to help decide this big decision, and I've been
yeah.
thinking for a few years. I have not spent nearly as much time around math, I suppose, as you have, you teaching it to so many people for a number of years. But I've always enjoyed math. And
Mm,
I've come to this term that maybe I stole it from someone else and I don't remember, or maybe I came up with it on my own, is that math is life and life is math. Basically, everything we do in life, you can find a way to look at it mathematically.
yeah.
With math, there tends to be, and I think, and you again know more about this than me, there's absolutes with most of math. It's this equals that. If you break it down in a certain way, you can see that yes, this on this side of the equation, for instance, must equal this for it to be correct. So as you look at life choices, I think if people got better at, we all got better at, you seem to have used it, but using math to help us decide what we're doing in life, just as a general topic, bringing that back, I think that is so important. So besides this big decision, have you always kind of looked at math as life and life as math?
Yeah, and I didn't realize that that was unique probably until high school. Um, for me, I love math because I think it's beautiful. I think that there's an elegance and there is a true beauty in the way that mathematics is constructed, in the way that a proof falls together. And then when I'm outside in the world, I'm always thinking about math. Everything somehow relates back to math for me. And it's interesting because, like I said, I realized in high school this is not the way that everyone thinks. That I was weird because this is the way that I approach the world. And the classic question from students, right? When am I ever going to use this? Right? Why is this important? And I I would say my answer has sort of evolved through the years to that question. The simplest answer is that schools and countries value mathematics education because it teaches people how to approach problems differently and how to think critically. A student who is excellent at mathematics, who really has set themselves apart from everyone else, can approach problems in new ways, can use multiple angles and attacks at a problem, and is also has grit. Someone who really will attack a problem until they have figured out how to solve it. My lowest level students will look at a problem, say, "I don't know how to do that," and they won't even try.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell them, I say, well, what if you wrote something down? What if you wrote anything down? Rewrite the problem, write the numbers that are there. Maybe you can see some way that they relate to each other, and then it'll get you down that path. And my highest level students do most of it in their head, right? They'll see it and they say, oh, okay, I can see this, and it's a struggle to get them. Okay, can you communicate those thoughts? Because that's what is really valuable. And another way to answer the question of when am I ever going to use this I just taught a unit on Voronoi diagrams, which you can go look up if you want to. Voronoi, Voronoi. It's a mathematician's name who developed this idea. And basically, the idea is if Curt, let's say you open a chicken company, a chicken restaurant, and you have 3 chicken restaurants in Minneapolis, 1, 2, 3, and you're wondering, you say, "Gee, it seems like we're delivering a lot of chicken. I would love to open a 4th restaurant. Where should I put it?" And then there are 2 ways to approach it. One is you just kind of say, well, we could put it here, 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 I don't know. Or you can use a Voronoi diagram, which will tell you the exact perfect place to put your 4th chicken restaurant. It'll be the most efficient place that will reach the most number of people. And I ask my students, I say, okay, if you are a person who's not great with mathematics, you'll put it somewhere that might be okay. If you are Jeff Bezos or you are Elon Musk, you are going to crunch the numbers to figure out the best place to put it because you are really good at mathematics and you know how to do this. And so the kids say, so if I want to make a lot of money someday, maybe mathematics will be important. Maybe. And so I tell them, I say, most of you probably will not use this mathematics in your everyday life. But if you can recall some specific thing at a moment where it's important, it could make you the #1 recruit for a job. It could make your company more money. It could give you an idea that allows you to start your own company. Like there are lots of ways that mathematics are used that people don't think about from day one until the day that you actually need it. And if it's something you're familiar with, it's like, oh my gosh, this actually has an application. And a lot of mathematics, I want to say 2 more things about what you asked. Mm-hmm. One was you said that most mathematics, it has a right answer. What I found is the most interesting mathematics is the one that's a little bit more open-ended. Like when I would be dealing blackjack at the casino, something amazing would happen. Like I deal 3 5 of diamonds in a row from a 6-deck shoe or something. And I'm like, wow, what are the odds of that happening? And so I would make a note of it happening. And then the next time it would happen would be maybe a year and a half later. And I'd make another note. And I'd say, okay, out of the 300,000 hands that I've dealt, 2 times has it happened. So even though I could crunch the numbers about the actual odds of this happening, it was more interesting to me to just see how it happened and what happened and how it unfolded. And that's how I interact with the world. I say probability is one of I find it most interesting. And so I say, how often does this thing happen? I get it sandwiched in between 2 cars on my motorbike. Okay, that happens once a week maybe, and so, okay, the odds are about 1 in 7 that I get sandwiched in between 2 cars. And so it's these things that are less certain that kind of make me more excited about it. And in mathematics, like the math that's being researched right now probably has very little application. What we found is science is usually about 10 years behind mathematics. Like group theory and abstract algebra was very hot in the mid 1900s. And then about 10 years later, they realized that there was applications in chemistry with group theory. So math has always been kind of ahead of things, and it may not be super applicable to what's happening in the world right now, but things usually catch up and it's like, oh my gosh, there's mathematics that explains this now for this application in science or theory or philosophy or whatever you may have. So that's kind of my explanation of why I find math beautiful, and what I hope to show my students once in a while in the classroom. And every once in a while they pick up on it. They're like, oh, that's really interesting. Sometimes.
I think it's great. And the way you're excited, it seems like you're excited about most things you talk about, but you're excited about that. And to tie that back to our first topic, being better at understanding math or wanting to is the difference between finding those few extra dollars per day or week or month or year to pull aside and put into something as an investment, realizing that you can live without those dollars in the meantime. And then if things continue to work the way they have for a very long time, whatever money you put aside will be worth way more money because of math and the way things compound. It'll be worth way more later. And then at some point, if you choose to, you can stop working and you can use the money that you've created by just putting some aside and do the things you want to do, have more free time, spend time with people that you want to spend time with, whatever you want to do when you no longer have to work as much or not at all. And that's a math problem. It's a math problem that you can solve. At how many years do you want to continue to work, or maybe how many years at the estimated end of your life do you want to not work? How do I make this happen? It is 100% a math problem that can be solved, and people solve it all the time.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I just in the last 5 or 6 years, I've gotten really involved with some groups on Facebook and in my life in person with my friends as well about gee, when could we retire? Like if we really try to save money, or could we take a year off and then go back to teaching? Or, if I just wanted to work weekends at a casino for a couple years, like could I do that and travel during the week? And it's a lot of fun, and the math is pretty simple if you understand compound interest. And you have a reliable investment strategy. And yeah, you are exactly right. That putting that, figuring out the amount of money you're willing to invest and the quality of life that you enjoy now, and then figuring out how you want to live your life in the future. It's completely a mathematics problem. Yeah.
And the having a good investment strategy, that's why you only put 5% into crypto. I think the amount of money that I have into crypto is somewhere around 2 or 3% right now. And the only chance that it would ever get more than 5 for me as well is if somehow, with great fortune, one of these things I own goes up dramatically, and that's a good problem to have. And then maybe you can reevaluate. Maybe that's when you take your year off. Maybe do something differently because of that. But to ever put more, because it is truly much more of a gamble, much less understood, way more volatile. That when you're investing, and the one that if you're willing to tell me, I believe it was the Vanguard fund, and that this is the same one. I've had Phil Ferguson, who is, of all the people I've come across about investments, I had him on my podcast in one of the early episodes. I listen to his podcast every week, and he gives the most sound, honest advice. And I think it's reason there's people, and your dad, you said, was in that business. A lot of people hire others to manage their money, and that is perfectly fine. That's how I got started. For many years, I didn't have the time or the energy or the effort or the curiosity to do it on my own. More recently, I've done it on my own because it is doable on your own once you understand it to a certain level. I guess it's also risky because then I'm in control of all the buttons. If I wanted to make a quick decision, there's no barrier of someone else that's probably has my best interest in mind to stop me from doing something stupid. I don't think I do too many things that are stupid, but there is an advantage to having someone else handle it for you. But in general, whether you have someone hired to help you in that way, or you're just learning more about it, getting money set aside for the future, it seems like a must unless you want to be someone, and these people exist for all sorts of reasons. I imagine people are working very late into their lives. Maybe some people love working and can't imagine not working. That's great. But even so, it'd be nice to not have to work and only want to work, and putting some money aside. I know a lot of people don't have extra money maybe right now, maybe don't 5 years ago or in the future. But the idea that, okay, a part of my spending strategy is to pay myself in the future needs to be a part of your budget, whether or not you have a true budget or not. Some slice of what you're making now has to be put aside if you really want life to get easier later.
Yeah, there are so many books out there that you can read about finances, but what most of them have in common is saying that time in the market is the most important thing, right? You just have to get started. You have to do something. And for me, it was my dad. For you, it was a financial advisor. And any way that you have to get started, I think that's scary for a lot of people, is just finding a path to get into it. Because, I listened to a seminar on crypto recently, and the guy was getting so technical. And I was thinking, man, these people just want to know, is it safe? What is the safest way to do this? And how do I get started? I was like, and those are not super difficult questions to answer. But yeah, I think there's one guy that I follow, and I'm going to make sure this is family friendly for your podcast. But he said you have to have some screw you money. You have to have some screw you money somewhere. So even if you are a person who enjoys your work, and you think, I'm going to work until I'm 70 years old, 80 years old, and count on whatever retirement fund the company might have set up for me, or I'm going to work until I die. Circumstances can change, and your boss might change, and your living situation might change, and you need to have some screw you money ready to go, where you can just leave it all behind and say, screw you, I'm going to go do my own thing. I'm going to change it up. I'm going to look for a new job. And if you don't have that to fall back on, your situation can become pretty dire pretty quickly. And so even if you're not planning for retirement, having some money set aside, at least, a few months worth of living expenses, I think is really important, and it's responsible. So whether you have that in a savings account or you have it invested, I think it's important for anyone listening to hopefully have that ready to go. You know?
And people come from all sorts of backgrounds, and I've met people where I've realized, like, I don't have a survivor type of mentality. I feel like I'm okay. I can look towards the future. And I think a lot of people, it's different, where the money they have it, they use it to get by to the next day or to the next week.
Yeah.
And that's where all of it goes. And maybe
Mm-hmm.
for them, that's the best way to feel whatever they need to feel about their life. And I'm sure for some people, they need every last dollar at some times to get by. But I do imagine there's times where people don't need every last dollar. And then the dollars that they don't really need get kind of used in a way that's not going to give them any long-term value, where if learning to invest and finding a way to do that would. And it's just, that's not really taught. Maybe you teach it to your students, but I don't know that that's really taught in schools, financial literacy.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think it's so important. I was fortunate my parents really, with their ideas around money, and things weren't always so great for us growing up on a farm in central Minnesota when farming prices weren't great. We didn't have a lot. We had enough, but not spending money foolishly is something that I learned. And I'm maybe a little more foolish now sometimes if it's worth it. But I know that in the backside there's a lot more that I have that I'll use later for the right reasons. And if and when something happens to me, hopefully the people that it ends up going to will use it for the good reasons. And I find that, I give some money now to causes and to individuals that I feel like I should give to. And I'm excited about the time where I feel like I have enough money forever. And then on top of that, I can really help more and more people. It's just, there's so much good that can be done with having enough money. And I think a lot of people have good intentions with their money. And then I realize maybe some people don't. I don't know. It's a whole nother conversation, but just
It's such a good one.
yeah, the people with the most money, I'm afraid, don't do enough good with their money. I'm thinking, but then again, I don't know exactly what they do. I'm excited for the day where I have enough money, and it's not even that much money where I feel like I can take care of myself, I can take care of others, and that's what I'm working towards. But by using the money compounding and putting money aside now helps get to that point where if I use like some people, I think, use their extra money to help people now, and that's another way to do it. But then at some point, they're not going to have enough money to take care of themselves. Maybe, I don't know. Just me kind of rambling on different ideas I've had surrounding math and money and how to be a good person. And maybe that gave you a couple more thoughts as well.
Yeah, you are right that you just opened up about 4 more hours of conversation. But I want to address a couple things. The people living paycheck to paycheck. It's sad for me to think that in America, which is billed as the land of opportunity, that we've created a situation really where it's very difficult to move out of that position. It's very easy to get stuck in this cycle of, I can only afford what I can afford, and it's very difficult to set money aside. When I started teaching, I was thinking that might be me. I was thinking, teaching is not a lucrative profession. And I realized very early on, I said, I have to make choices about things in my life that are important and things where I can save some money. And my students, especially when I was in Minnesota, they'd say, I know teachers don't make very much, but it seems like you like to travel. It seems like you have these lofty ambitions. How do you make it happen? I said, you just have to make choices. I mean, I think I'm not talking to the paycheck to paycheck people, but I think there are people who think they only are making enough money to survive, but they're having a Starbucks latte every morning. It's like, I think that there are people who are spending their money in ways that make it so at the end of the month they're out of money, but there are places where they could be making different choices and saving $1 or $2 every day, and that turns into a lot of money by the end of the month. And so what I realized at the beginning of my teaching career, I said, there are a few places that I see I can really cut back, and I can start putting those dollars to better use. And whether that is being able to give back to the community, or be able to put something aside so that I can use it later in life, that was a really important step for me and an important way of thinking. So yeah, I think a really good place to start for anyone that is saying, how can I make this better? Look at what your monthly expenses are and see where you can make a change and save a few dollars. And it's amazing how quickly things can compound if you're able to put those away. So yeah, absolutely.
And I don't do it so much right now during the pandemic for a few reasons, but I had my side hustle gig of Uber and Lyft driving,
Yeah.
where I imagined like I was putting some hours in per week, and you talked about the different side jobs that you've done. When you're working and making money, yes, it takes some time and effort, and you get less free time, but you're also eliminating all of those hours where you otherwise might be spending money.
Yeah,
And
man, the casino was so good for that because every Friday and Saturday night I was working instead of drinking and spending money at clubs. And not that I would do that all that frequently, but it was such an easy excuse. People say, "Oh, let's go do this thing." That I gotta work. Sorry.
and I think that's the habit. So all this, and I have other habits I need to improve on. My things related to my health and exercise, I think about, and like, how can I really get this habit ingrained? So it sounds like
Yeah,
our habits with money are pretty good, and other people might have other habits that they're great at that they're not so good at money, but they're good at other things that maybe both of us would wish we could do better.
sure.
But there's ways to, I think, build this into your life to be better at it. I'm hopeful, and obviously I think there's levels of privilege that I'm speaking from. Perhaps you might be as well, but I do think no matter how difficult someone's situation is, I think at some point you can get to a point where you can do things differently. And I just want everyone's life to be better. And I don't know. I really I'm hopeful that more people can realize the use of math and numbers to their advantage. And I think maybe this whole conversation kind of wraps around that, with you being a math guy and taking this big leap over there. One last question with that. It sounds like you're still teaching your classes online.
Yeah, that was a very recent change. So we went back in person in May, and we were in person through the end of the school year. And then there was a little scare in July, right before we were supposed to start school, in two central towns called Da Nang and Hoi An in Vietnam. They're on the coast. And so we started 2 days later than we had anticipated, but everything was totally fine. Everything was contained. So we've been in person since the beginning of the year. And then end of January 27th, there was an outbreak in the north of the country. So I'm in the south. Ho Chi Minh City, which was formerly Saigon, is where I am. And so very close to Hanoi, there were maybe 50 cases, which is huge after you've gone, 80 some days with nothing.
Mm.
And so everyone kind of freaked out. We were at school on a Monday, and that was our last week before the lunar holiday break. So lunar holiday, we get a week and a half off. So we were at school on a Monday. We were supposed to be there all week. On Friday, we were going to start the holiday. And on Monday, they said we're online for the rest of the week because they anticipated a lot of travel happening over Lunar New Year. And so we were online for 4 days. And then we all went on holiday. And they said you can travel, but cautiously. So we stayed in the south. And then 2 days before school was supposed to start, they said we're going to continue online for a week and a half. So right now we are scheduled to go back March 1. I think they're just waiting to see if all the travel creates a new wave or a new outbreak. And if it doesn't, I think we'll be back at school on March 1st. If it does, I would guess we'll have another 2 or 3 weeks online. But right now it's very much just kind of wait and see what happens. And yeah, I don't know. I think I'd put our odds at 50-50 right now that we go back on the 1st of March. So we'll see. I don't know.
There you are suggesting odds, which is a math
Yeah.
thing. You're describing the shutdown, which is also a math thing, and the reason why this country, in the United States, the states, haven't done so well. I would be reading people that were great at math explaining what's going to happen if we don't do things differently. And there's other people that had more
Exponential
power
growth.
of control that were kind of just letting things be as they were.
Yeah.
The math was telling you this is what's going to happen, and it has happened. Meanwhile, in Vietnam, they, in previous experience and maybe people making decisions with a better understanding of math, that like, no, we need to shut this down. We need to not let
Mm-hmm.
it get out of control, so then we can continue on with normal life more of the time later than if we just ignore it. So again, math, math, math.
It's everywhere. Yeah. Love it.
Noah, let's wrap up the conversation with my final segment, a personal growth segment. I know we've talked about a lot of things that it sounds like there's been a lot of focuses on growing and being the person that you want to become, or however you want to describe it. Is there another story or another topic that we haven't touched on that would be a good indicator of something you're focusing on that also might help some others out if you tell that story?
Absolutely. I'm looking. I have. I call it my last 10 minutes list. Sometimes in class, if we have 10 minutes left in class and we're done with the lesson for the day, I have a list of stories that I'll put up on the screen, and they're all kind of enticing titles. And I'm trying to see which one I'm going to tell. I think I'm going to tell the Prius in Michigan. I was driving to see some friends in the Traverse City area of Michigan, which I'm trying to do this. It could be like this. So this is Michigan. Traverse City is kind of up here. And I was driving. So if you have a map handy, I was driving from Minnesota across northern Wisconsin, then across the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Then I was going to cross the Mackinac Bridge down into the mainland Michigan. And I'm trying to remember why this was. I think I had left my car at the university, or I was driving my sister's car for whatever reason. She drives a Prius. I was driving a Camry at the time. And for those that are not familiar, a Prius is a hybrid car. So part battery, part gas. And I didn't know a lot about it. I had only driven it a few times. And so I'm driving along and the gas light comes on. And I'm thinking, okay, in my car, in my Camry, the gas light will come on when you have like 50 miles to go or something, right? And then it starts dinging at you, and then it starts blinking, and then it's like, dude, idiot, pull over, get some gas, right? Like it's very obvious when you're going to run out of gas. With the Prius, what happened was the light turned on, and it was on for maybe 10 miles, and then it turned off. And I was like, huh, what could that mean? I was like, either it was a mistake or the battery is taking care of things, right? Because batteries should be able to drive this car for a while. And I hadn't seen a gas station in a while. So I was like, I'm sure it'll be fine. And so eventually I'm driving and the gas light comes back on, and there's another light next to it that says like fuel tank empty or something. I was like, okay, well, hopefully the battery will get me wherever I need to go. And I'm driving up a hill. And if you have a Prius, they have a little display that shows the bars of the battery. And I was just watching the bars go down, driving up this hill. They were just depleting. And then the car just stops. So I pull over to the side of the road with whatever battery was left. I turned my flashers on. I don't even remember if they stayed on. And my father, pragmatic man that he is, had us all with AAA, and highly recommend it for anyone that doesn't have AAA. It's worth the $60 a year or whatever it is. And so I call AAA. I say, hey, ran out of gas. I gave them the mile marker of the highway. And they said, yeah, we're sending someone over from Roy's Garage. I was like, oh, very UP. Roy's Garage is coming to save me, the Prius driver from Minnesota on the side of the road. So I'm sitting there, and a few people drive by, and they kind of slow down and look, doing the rubberneck thing out the window, like, oh, what happened to this guy? And driving on. And eventually there's a pickup truck that drives by. Kind of slows down, pulls over to the side of the road, looks back, turns around. I'm like, okay, Roy's Garage is here. Comes over, says, hey, you ran out of gas, huh? It's like, yeah, I ran out of gas. It's like, oh, no big deal. So he takes the gas can out of the back of his pickup truck, comes over, shoves it in, asks me, where are you from? Minnesota, driving to Traverse City. And he says, oh, okay, that's cool. I was just getting gas for my lawnmower anyway, so no problem. Takes out the gas can, puts it back in his truck, and I say, so how does this work? Like, do I pay you or does it go through? And he's like, oh, no, it's all taken care of. Don't worry about it. He gets in his truck, drives away. And he says, he told me before he left, like, there's a gas station over the hill. You'll find it. No problem. You were actually really close. It's like, oh, great, thanks. So I get back in the car, drive to the gas station, and I'm filling up with gas, and I get a phone call. And they say, hey, this is AAA. Roy's Garage is looking for you. And I said, oh, no, they found me. No problem. It's good. Like we're all set. And they said, are you sure? So yeah, it's good. So I hung up, start driving again with my full tank of gas. And I stop and I go pull over and I realize, oh my gosh, some guy just pulled over and gave me gas. Like this was not Roy's Garage. Some dude just pulled over and gave me gas. And I was thinking, I was like, oh my gosh, was I polite? Was I respectful? Did I say thank you? I was just, because, it's different, right? Like when it's transactional, right? When you're paying for this service and they're coming to give you gas, it's one thing. When it's just someone pulling over, and then I started to think, that's ridiculous. You should be kind and respectful and polite to everyone, no matter whether you're paying them or not. Uh-huh. And I was thinking, man, I just wish that I could track this guy down and say thank you and buy him a tank of gas. And then I thought, well, maybe this is the moral of it all, right? I can just pay it forward. I can just do this again for someone else. And so at the next gas station I went to, I went inside and I said, can I pay for that person's gas that was at the pump? And they said, oh yeah, we can make that happen. And so I paid for their gas and just drove away. And I was like, this is great. And I still hope that maybe somewhere in the world, this chain is still happening of people paying for other people's gas. I don't know. But I just thought, what a great example of selfless love. That this guy just pulled over and gave me some gas. And I try to live that way, my life that way every day. And some days are better than others. But I think it's in the charitable and giving line that we were talking about before, and making time and money for things like that. Because those are the things that matter. And those are the things that you remember. 20 years from now, I'm not going to remember the day that crypto went 5 times. I'm going to remember this guy that pulled over and gave me gas. So that's my story for the day, my last 10 minutes, if you will.
Well, it's cool that you have a list of 10 stories that you can come up with if you ever need a fun and worthwhile story to share. So that's like a personal growth thing for anyone to realize, oh, we can do this also and be prepared to have a good story, a meaningful story. And I think with the pay it forward, there are some chains that go around, and I hear the ones where someone's paying for the person behind them at Starbucks or whatever, and it keeps going. And that's kind of neat. But to me, I don't know if that really makes as much sense, because every one of those people was about to pay for their own anyhow. It's the efforts that we can do for someone that is in need, like you in general, maybe not in need most of the time, but in that moment you were kind of screwed. I guess Roy or Roy's Garage was coming to help out, but you were in a spot where someone realized that until someone helps you, you're stuck. And that person recognized that. Maybe he'd been there before, and that's a way that he was paying it forward, but he helped you. And I guess to look for the people that really could use a boost immediately is doing that, at least occasionally helping someone out, is maybe the personal growth story that I'm taking away from this, that we've got to keep our eyes open. Like around here in the city, someone's on the side of the road, you kind of assume, okay, someone's coming to help them soon. Is it even safe? Right. Who knows? And I think small town, Upper Peninsula, Michigan, there's probably a different attitude that, maybe he hates Prius drivers. As I'm an owner of a Prius, and I feel like a lot of people don't like Prius drivers, but even that person decided to help you that day. So that was pretty neat.
Absolutely.
Well, Noah, thank you for the conversation. I feel like we've covered a lot, and we could probably talk for much longer, and perhaps we do this again sometime. Is anything else you want to add before we hit the stop button?
No, I just want to say it's an honor to be included on the incredible roster of people that have been on your show. So thank you so much, Curt. It has been an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you, Noah. And we'll chat again soon. I think I have a lot of follow-up questions about the time when I do finally, for the next time, travel abroad, and specifically when I go to Asia. I think you're one of the people that I'll be in contact with.
Anytime, man. Good night from here and good morning to you.
Thanks, Noah.
Bye-bye.